name is Mike Cuneo. I've been with Zscaler, I guess, a few years now, helping customers or advising customers on Zscaler's M&A benefits. And my M&A advisory role, for that matter, has been underpinned by my decades as a tech strategist, but more recently with the Big Four, where I've helped dozens of Fortune 500s engage, pre or post deal in their efforts. And I've really brought that experience, if other tied it to our benefits specifically here. That's who I am. But that said, happy to be here for this session. I want to remind you, as we get into the discussion, that you have access to the Q&A channel. Please submit questions as we go, and as we get towards the end, assuming time permits, we will answer them accordingly. That said, let's get started. With me today is Matt Ramberg. He's a VP of Infrastructure at Sanmina. But to do proper justice to his intro, Matt, I'd like to give it over to you for a minute to go through your role and where you're at.
Thanks, Mike. As Mike mentioned, my name is Matt Ramberg. I am the VP of Security at Sanmina. Sanmina is a name not many people are aware of, but we are Fortune 500, a global electronics manufacturing services company. We have roughly, it varies because of M&As and divestitures. We have roughly 60 plus facilities on 6 continents, and we work in multiple environments, multiple different areas such as automotive, communication, medical, down to defense and aerospace. So we do a ton of work across a broad range of segments. We are headquartered in San Jose, California. I'm based in Colorado. And we've been with Zscaler for some time now. I don't even know the number of years, many years. And about 3 years ago, we engaged with the ZPA product. And that really transformed our M&A process. And we're going to get into that. But we, as a manufacturing company, I think Steven mentioned it, everybody's getting into, it's a thing these days. Everybody's merging. There's so many mergers and acquisitions taking place. A couple of years ago, VMware bought Carbon Black, and we thought, wow, that's surprising. And then earlier this year, I think it was Broadcom announced they're buying VMware. And it's just everybody's being bought into this. Well, the manufacturing world is no different. There are a lot of M&As that take place, some cases divestitures, and our company's no different. We average probably about 3 to 4 a year across those M&As and Ds. That's a typical average, and anybody that's been through these knows that's a lot. That's a whole lot of work. And I'm happy to be here, Mike.
Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate it. Pulling on the string there a little bit, let's just jump right in. You bring up M&A, at least, and divestitures for that matter, as a big part of Sanmina's business strategy. From your perspective, how has those demands for those integration separations changed, especially over the last chunk of years?
There's been, there was a commercial, I forget which company it was, that talked about the speed of business. And it really is the truth. Business is no different than individuals. 10 years ago, we would order something and be happy to see it in a month. A few years ago, you'd order something online and be happy to see it in a week. And now we all complain if it doesn't offer Amazon next day delivery. The business is no different. The business in the past understood that M&As were a process, were a lengthy process. They were going to take time. And as things progressed, as the cloud really became a difference maker, the business is now expected things to happen much faster. And until we had this ability, our M&As were pretty much the same, and that's relatively recently, just 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It was still a slow process. I would dare say the risk of dirty laundry. We've got a facility in a certain location that we're probably still not fully integrated, and that's probably 3 years ago, just because of the nature of that particular merger that we did. Actually, in that case, it was an acquisition. So that the biggest demand we've seen is get us up and running, yesterday. Obviously, that's not there, but get us up immediately.
Any ideas with separations more specifically? Same idea, just about speed, or do separations bring in different sort of demands from the business?
No, it's pretty much the same. It was how quickly can we get them? I don't even purport to understand the whole financial side of it, but there are financial implications, the whole 9 yards, with getting things divested as quickly as possible, as securely as possible. So it's pretty much the same from an IT point of view, my point of view. It's just in reverse, if you will. Let's securely get them divested as quickly as possible.
Yep. Okay. So, you brought up the idea of, at least in the last few years, sort of changing that playbook, at least with cloud being more of the enabler. How and/or what cloud capabilities really have changed that playbook, in your approach?
There's a few things that just made it, just was a groundbreaking difference. It replaced, on-premise hardware. Gone. We didn't have to worry about purchasing hardware. I think Pam might have mentioned it earlier. We didn't have to worry about the networks, getting networks configured. We didn't have to worry about firewalls. We didn't have to worry about patches, updates, etc. Frankly, all that pressure was put on you. It was put on Zscaler. We're relying on your product to handle right down to the DR perspective. We didn't have to buy double the hardware. Everybody's aware, we always think, I got to have this server. Well, you got to have two of them, because if this one goes down, I need a failover. And all of those things were now non-existent. We didn't have to worry about those concerns anymore. And from my perspective as the head of security, one of the biggest concerns was obviously, and I think Stephen touched on this, I know nothing about that environment that we're about to acquire or merge with. I have no idea if they're, it would seem basic that they should have antivirus. I have no idea if they do. I have no idea who they give remote access to, et cetera, et cetera. And with the cloud, none of that was ever a concern anymore, particularly with the ZPA product, because I'm not putting you on my network. So it was just, I don't want to say it's 0% risk, but it's virtually eliminated all of that concern. So it allowed us to just turn things over much quicker. So, I guess to answer your question directly, how did it affect the methodology? It changed this is going to be a very high level answer. It changed our timeline. It used to be, hey, we've got all these 100 things to worry about, and that's going to take us a few weeks to get done or to get planned out from a project management perspective. And now it was, for the most part, how many people is it? We'll have you up and running in a few hours, connected in a few hours.
Wow. So to the point of at least timeline change, Matt, was it a significant change in regards to what's next? Meaning, if you compress the timeline up front, were there additional efforts you had to think about and start earlier to actually, continue with the benefits you gained with the speed, let's say, ZPA might have brought you?
The biggest thing was being involved, Mike. It's there are many times, again, I think it's something Stephen touched on, usually IT and security, probably even below IT, are the last to know about anything that's taking place, the last to be brought into the loop. Yep. Just make it happen, get it done. We already went and did this, you need to go fix it. And I think, again, I keep referring back to Stephen, but, I think one of his slides touched on bolting on after. And so the biggest change was, hey, we can make this happen for you, but we need to know. We have to be involved from the beginning to understand exactly what we're doing, how many people we're talking about, various things, the technical side of the house, what kind of IDP do you use, et cetera. But I'd say that was probably the biggest change we had to make is, the business couldn't just do the business thing. They had to make sure IT was involved in the business thing.
Yep. So you bring up to at least, the introduction of cloud, especially over the past couple of years, and now demand, the speed of business demand. is there a different approach in regards to what you do for integration versus what you typically would deploy enterprise-wide? Or, was that a journey to where you're actually just onboarding users to the enterprise, though it's, it's still considered a quote unquote integration at this point?
I'd say it's a combination. So, the beauty was we were able to now integrate these people, or I wouldn't say, I won't use the term integrate. We were now able to get the merged company or the acquired company access to everything they needed. In our case, as a manufacturing company, ERP is usually number one, our ERP system. So we could get them access day one, hour one, depending upon the size. And we didn't have to worry about imaging that system or any of those other concerns that typically come with that sort of operation. That didn't eliminate those operations. It just allowed the teams responsible for those operations to now plan out a more balanced approach. They did not have to worry about having it done on day one, because again, that's that other IT side, right? It's not just getting the system connected, it's getting it imaged to your company image. So, I think it's a combined approach. It just made it a lot easier for us because the number one concern of the business is getting that integration. We can make that happen day one. From an IT perspective, now we can, slow roll's the wrong word, but take the time to properly integrate that company moving forward in a short amount of time. And frankly, we did not have that capability when we did the merger or the acquisition of this other company I mentioned several years ago, which is why to this day, it's still I'll call it a work in progress because we did not have what we have today.
Yep. So interesting, Matt, and I've heard this from other customers as well. By at least adopting cloud and leveraging that, and I'll say sort of the zero trust aspect for integrations, you decouple what the future state demands are for what you acquired away from the integration. So allow the business to be, productive sooner while you guys better figure out what you want to do with, I'll say, what you've acquired, hardware-wise, just infrastructure-wise overall. Is that an accurate statement?
That's absolutely an accurate statement. That allows us. I can see how that fits into what we're doing now and the company I mentioned previously that we're still working on. That's exactly what it allows us to do. We don't have to wait until we've got all the answers to get the integration going. We can allow them to connect to our ERP. And in many cases, we do this. We place a connector on their network so our company can access their ERP. So there's that cross connectivity that I think Pam was talking about. We can do that on day one and then answer all these questions or solve any potential problems as we move forward. We use Firewall X, they use Firewall Z. Well, that's not a concern. We get them connected today, and let's worry about what we're going to do on a hardware perspective moving forward at a later time. So it does allow us to have that ability, which we didn't have before. I think most mergers, are we going to use our hardware or their hardware? Which one are we? You got to make a decision now, so we can get that connection going.
Yeah, and for that matter, which ones are still haven't even been depreciated on the ones you acquired anyway?
That's right. Do they have a later version of the software than us? Let's use theirs. Whatever the case might be. Yeah.
Semi-tangential, but tied to it. Adopting cloud. Did you have to adjust your talent pool, or grow in regards to the amount of resources to manage, integration separations because of the new technologies you would have cloud technologies you would have adopted, or what was your experience?
The simple answer is no. We did not have to get any, cloud experts. It really was a fairly straightforward process. In our case, we have about, it varies, but about 35,000 employees today. In our case, we literally had two guys involved in our entire deployment of ZPA from start to finish. And they handed it off to some administrators that handle it today. So it was a very simplified process. They did not need to be cloud experts. They did, of course, have to learn the system. learn how to use it, but they didn't have to be some cloud security experts. They followed basic principles of security, but it's now from a cloud perspective. It's still the same least privileges kind of standard, right? It's still the same zero trust standard. It's just cloud-based now. So no, there were no additional expenditures from that point of view at all in our company.
Gotcha. How about, and I don't know necessarily that you are, but from terms of either from being regulated and managing to compliance, was there any change in how you had to address that with integrations leveraging cloud?
No, we haven't run across any. We do get customers that ask quite a bit. I'm sure everybody gets this. Certainly our defense customers, that ask us, well, with this cloud, do you have security this and security that, or do they have this certification or that certification? And we respond accordingly. Every cloud solution we use is already under some sort of certification, as is Zscaler. So no, that's really not been a concern at all. To include in our defense and aerospace division, which for anybody listening that might be involved in defense and aerospace knows that they have some really stringent requirements for security. And it's just not been a concern whatsoever, primarily because of the architecture, the way it works. We actually had one customer that was very concerned about VPN, and they kept bridging that until I finally, we had a call and explained to them, we're not using VPN, we're using zero trust. And, once that explanation was provided, this was a defense and aerospace customer, they went away fully satisfied. So short answer is no, it's not been a concern at all.
Gotcha. Okay. How about from a just benefits? I heard at least the ability to manage to sort of speed to value, right? The business is looking for the instant gratification of their acquisitions. The idea you just brought up, at least from a compliance perspective, it's almost a non-event if not beneficial. And then some version of cost, right? It's an as a service, so there's some kind of predictable cost. One, at least validate that last statement, but are there any other benefits that you haven't discussed that, or at least I haven't even probed into?
I think I've covered them all, but it is worth repeating. The time we've saved. The time is just it's almost immeasurable. I shouldn't even say almost. It's very, very difficult thing to measure time and resources, at least on paper. But when you can tell somebody that 3 years ago it would take us months for full connections, or even several weeks to get connectivity between two companies, and now we can do the same thing in a couple of hours. That's just the benefit of that is just tremendous, getting them up and running the same day. But it's the time, it's the resources, the fact that my department, the security department, can handle this virtually ourselves from start to finish. Whereas in the past, the network team had to be involved, and our infrastructure team had to be involved, and the security team had to be involved. And now it virtually involves only my team. There might be some issues here and there where we involve others. So it frees up those resources to focus on the other side of the M&A, getting all the hardware and things together. The company reputation, and I'm going to bring this up because I actually had a salesperson bring this up with me. I'm going to use reputation / expectation. That he liked the idea when he went to one of the acquisitions we did, being able to tell them that we could have this done in a day, have them connected in a day. And that company was not used to hearing that. They were used to, okay, what's your project plan? Show me the Gantt chart where our connectivity is way out here. And we were able to tell them, nope, we can have you operational in a day. So company reputation matters. Now we can tell people, we can either do a merger, acquisition, or divestiture, for the most part, same day, at least from a connectivity perspective. And then Mike, there's just a number of other things. The improved efficiency of employees. ZTNA, ZPA, using the ZCC, the client connector, much more efficient than VPN, much faster, more robust. The failover exists already, so there's no interruptions. So employees have liked it. I think you or Stephen touched on total cost of ownership. There's no hardware involved, none. We have bought no hardware, and we just deploy the clients, or in some cases, and I know it's a different topic, in some cases we deploy ZCC, other cases browser access, but there's no hardware involved. It's just been a number of benefits that you can see, actual benefits.
Yep.
Quantifying them is difficult, right? I can't say, oh, we've saved 85% of, but just a number of benefits. Overall, it's been a quite positive experience. I will tell you, being the head of the department that everybody hates the most, security, we've received a lot of positive feedback on the whole process, not just the client itself, but the whole M&A process.
Let me just pull on one tiny piece there, Matt, as we start to wrap up here, is around end user experience. And I look at it from two perspectives. Is there an impact, good or bad, on how the user is, their day-to-day activities versus, leveraging these paths? And, I'll say with the amount of help desk calls, does going down this path actually cause something that you needed to amp up your ability to support your users?
I wouldn't say amp up, but we do have some folks that on my team, we call them administrators, and they are the support team, if you will. Okay. As far as the help desk goes, nobody even calls the help desk. Excuse me. Our most employees now, they know to contact my department. They don't even contact the help desk. They contact us. We get them corrected within minutes. Usually it's a very simple thing. And in fact, I will tell you, in 99.9% of cases, it's simply a URL or an application that we've not permitted yet. That's all it is. So, within a few seconds, we add it, they're up and running. Employees, that's where it really, I do like stressing this. That's where we've seen the most positive response is the employees. And that's what matters. They're no longer complaining. Simple things. I know it's going to sound like simple things, but when they would connect a VPN and could no longer use their home printer, all of those kind of silly things are just not a concern anymore. No, it's not led to an increase in calls at all. It really just is, hey, can you add this application to, my list of applications?
Yep, just a request, not an issue per se. Okay.
Just a request. Yes, that's exactly right.
And then, tell me, that's all I have from an M&A perspective. Matt, is there anything that I didn't bring up with respect to M&A that you think would be relevant to the audience? And you covered a lot, so you can easily say no to that question.
That's a nice way of saying I talk a lot. Okay. No, I think there's so many different facets of M&As and divestitures, of course. And frankly, I could talk quite a bit about ZCC just in general, aside from its M&A capabilities. But no, I think you have covered everything. The biggest thing we've seen is being involved. As long as I'm sure folks on the call have heard me mention hours, and in fact, some might be thinking, well, how many are you talking about? Well, we did an M&A last year. We bought acquired a company in Bulgaria, about 800 users, and they were up and running day one, the same day that the acquisition went through. So that's sort of the numbers I'm talking about for anybody that was curious. It's about 800 in that one day. A lot of prep work behind the scenes, maybe not a lot, but prep work behind the scenes. But no, Mike, I think we have covered the biggest aspects of the M&As and Ds.
Fair. Thank you, Matt. If anything, it was very illuminating your perspectives on how cloud-enabled M&A really helps answer to the speed of business. I cannot thank you enough, one, for the conversation, but two, you don't escape yet. I'd like to at least bring Pam back to see if there's any questions from the audience.
Matt, that was great. Thanks, Mike. So Matt, you kind of touched on an aspect from an end user perspective. One of the things that I think it's so confusing, and in my previous world, whether it was divestiture or an acquisition, end users would be so confused with the amount of change management coming at them, right? They've been acquired or they are actually being spun off. And what I had seen, and maybe you can just touch on briefly, is I had seen that when we used, a zero trust architecture, it took all of the confusion for the users out of the mix. They didn't have to think about, okay, do I use this VPN to get to that on that network? Or now I'm part of this company, so do I use that VPN to get to that application? And you see an influx, right, of tickets to the help desk. Can you talk just slightly about how your end users saw that?
Sure. Pam, that actually touches on, it's, I say this quite a bit, and it's going to sound corny, but I do believe it. I put it out in my company all the time. One of the key things to making all of this a success was turning the IT security department, my department, from the Department of No, N-O, into the Department of No, K-N-O-W. Explaining to people not only what we're doing, but in my mind, more importantly, why we're doing it. We're not doing it, to slow you down. We're not doing it to make life difficult. Here's why we're doing things. So we did explain to employees quite a long time before we got off of VPN and switched to zero trust, what it was going to do, how it was going to work. And there was a lot of communication on, Mike and I just talked about it. There was a lot of communication on, we expect the only issues you're going to have, that you're going to experience, are simply URLs or applications that we've not allowed yet. We've not permitted through ZCC. And to date, I would have to put that in the 99 point. It's probably the 4.9 range, that's the only issues we've seen. Of course, there's always those one-offs here and there where something here or something there you got to fix, but it's probably in the 4.9 range, 4.9s. That's the only issue everybody's experienced. So there really has not been any calls to the help desk whatsoever. We also did make a point of telling them, if you have issues, because it's always tough when you're trying to sell a new product, to contact us directly. So they didn't have to email the help desk or call the help desk. They could literally send a chat to a specific group that we created and say, hey, I need access to such and such. And we would, if it didn't require approvals, we grant the access. Right. So it's been that really has eliminated a lot of the concerns and the calls.
Very streamlined process.
That was the hope. And yes, so far it has worked pretty well. Yeah.
So one of the questions that came through was setting up new policy groups, because ultimately a policy group is what gives a user permission, right? Seems like that was done really, really quickly. How much manual fine tuning was necessary, or if at all, did you find?
There's definitely some manual fine tuning. That's a great question, by the way. There are obviously you can't create groups for everybody. Just not feasible, right? There's 35,000 employees, whatever the number is. So what we did is we created just a handful of groups to begin with, 4 or 5. Some of these will sound familiar. We had an engineering group and an HR group and a marketing group, an IT group, and an all users group, whatever you want to term that.
General bucket.
General bucket, that's right. And then we just started, we did start the process with a single facility and got them placed into those buckets that we created. And the thought being, okay, if we get one plant standard, that's what we see.
Mhm.
Now we can take that and apply it to the next plant. And that's what we did. And then the next plant had a few changes. They've got different applications, et cetera. And, and we made those changes across the board. Now, I don't want this to sound like it took forever. It was not. This was a fairly quick process, because people, I think everybody knows, employees are going to let you know that quick if they can't get to what you're supposed to give them access to. And that built up our standard template. We have since then done manual templates for various things, whatever that might be. Contractors, companies maybe that are just a vendor, for example. We've done it with some vendors that need to come and do work. So there was some manual work on that, but we did allow the plants to, they're the ones that fed that information to us, told us which buckets to create. Of course, we wouldn't know which ones to create. And, as soon as that was complete, you're pretty much done. And I will add, and I know I'm running long here, Pam, from an M&A perspective, we also learned after our first one, let's create a standard M&A bucket. So we now have a standard M&A bucket that we obviously call M&A. And it has these default apps that company needed. And sure enough, when we did our next M&As, it was the same ones that company needed. So we have that bucket already built for future M&As.
That's awesome. And again, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this happens when you use a zero trust architecture, the exact same in reverse, right? For divestitures, there's a lot of multinationals I'm talking to right now that are actually they're taking half the company and spinning it off, right? It's happening all over the world. And this zero trust architecture works the same way in reverse. And to that point, I think when you create a great end user experience, it also, and when a user doesn't have to think about things, you also will find that the benefit also affects your technical teams. And hopefully you saw that a benefit to your technical teams was, oh, wow, I don't have to impact the end user because the technology connects a user to that which they're trying to connect to, instead of all these various steps to either divest or spin off or integrate. I found technology, when it connects users, it's amazing how the technical teams have much more streamlined processes for the true integration as time goes on. So with Matt, thank you so much. This was so, there were a number of other questions. We'll quick get some answers into the chat. But
Sure.
Thank you so much for going ahead and taking this time with us and going over it. And Mike also for talking with Matt. This was great.